Hi, and welcome to Missouri Athletic Club Connections, a podcast highlighting Missouri's only premier athletic club. The MAC is recognized as the foremost private club in St. Louis, known for attracting exceptional people and enriching lives for generations. I'm MAC Membership Director Rodney Stoyer, and just recently, legendary sports broadcaster Bob Costas was at the club for the MAC Speaker Series. Here to tell us more about that night and the Speaker Series in general is Governor Steve Albart. Governor, thanks for coming to the podcast.
Rodney, thanks for having me and talking about the Speaker Series. Bob Costas, what a great night that was
for the
Missouri Athletic Club to celebrate 50 years of Bob Costas in the Missouri Room at the MAC was just a crown jewel of a night, for the club.
It absolutely was, and again, I had the privilege. I'm kind of one of those where I love to be able to say shook someone's hand, and what a humble guy, wonderful. He wasn't turning anyone away. He was talking to everybody.
But he was really engaging. He's someone that really is connected to most anyone in the world. His experience with the Olympics, with NBC, baseball, his reach is around the world and he can connect with anyone. He was in the club engaging with our members, very humble, very engaging. He was, working the art lounge members as well as anybody, and people, members were telling him stories that they've connected with him over the past 50 years, and Bob would listen, and he really would always usually remember the moment that the member was describing and add something to it. I think every person that had a chance to meet Bob Costas not only enjoyed the experience, Bob made that person feel as important as any other celebrity that Bob has access to.
Agreed. And to our listeners, stay tuned after this podcast. We're going to actually add some clips from the evening, so you'll see that at the tail end here. So now, Bob was wonderful. We loved that. It was what a great night recently here. But he's not the only high-profile guest. I mean, we get other very high-profile guests for the Speaker Series as well. Any ones particularly stand out to you?
Well, I think all of our guests have been really good, but I'll highlight maybe the bigger celebrity guest, and then I also want to highlight really all of our guests because we've had 12 events since 2021 when we launched the Speaker Series. And our bigger name celebrities, of course, Bob Costas probably leads the pack, but we also Joe Buck, Chip Carey, really big names as well. Karl Rove and Taylor Twellman are probably our bigger celebrity names that have passed through the Speaker Series. But I also think, we've had United States Senator Claire McCaskill, United States Senator Roy Blunt, and we've had local CEOs of big companies pass through: Kathy Mazzarella, Bob Chapman, Lyle Karzenby, Maxine Clark, Jim McKelvey, and fellow MAC member, Bob O'Loughlin, CEO of LA Gym, that's had as big of impact on the St. Louis community as anyone. So a long list of names and people that have made a big impact to St. Louis and the country and on a worldwide basis.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Again, I mean, they're all interesting for different reasons. And to that point, the Speaker Series, how do you go about selecting some of these names?
Well, we start with, I'll just kind of mention our mission statement because that really is what guides us. The MAC's Speaker Series is an exclusive event for members and their guests to engage with leaders that are impacting sports, business, community, and leadership on a local, national, and worldwide level. And we have an awesome Speaker Series committee that every speaker we have, there's a connection to that speaker, whether it's a member of the committee or just a member of the club. So every speaker that we have is due to a connection. And so this would be really a good time to really highlight to the members that our committee we always like for more people to participate. And if a member has an idea or a connection, we want to hear from you because every speaker we've connected to, there's been a connection to the MAC or an MAC member. And that's the future of the Speaker Series, is to understand what those ideas are and who we're connected to, and we're all ears to new ideas.
Well, and being behind the scenes a little bit with that committee, it was always amazing to me to hear some of the conversations and how they happened, where it was, oh yeah, I gave him a call. We're good. Like, really? You just called that person? And there's a lot of that, right?
But there is. I mean, there's personal friendships, and the MAC been around for as long as it's been, and we can go back to the Jack Buck Sports Awards and the Jack Buck, which the Jack Buck Grill's named after. Is that over the course of decades, there's a lot of celebrities and a lot of people have passed through the Missouri Athletic Club, right. Whether it's media related or sports related or just political related and business related, that know that when they come to the MAC, it's going to be a great experience. Right. They know that it's a great membership group that they're speaking to, that they want to connect with. And there's a long history of celebrities and leaders coming to the MAC to connect with our members and to be engaged in the community. So this is just an extension of what's been built over decades at the Missouri Athletic Club. And when we reach out to people, it's it's an easy ask because they know the type of an events that we do, the history that we have, and they want to be a part of that today and going forward.
Oh, I love that. Well, obviously, the next question's got to be, what can we look forward to? What's upcoming in the speaker series?
Well, the next couple of events we have, the one that's people are really excited about is in February 20th, 2025, where we're going to celebrate 25 years of the St. Louis Rams Super Bowl victory, which it's hard to believe that it's been 25 years since the St. Louis Rams won the Super Bowl. But I know we have some of the Rams coaches and players, Dick Vermeil, Mike, Coach Martz, and Marshall Falk, Mike Jones, among others that we expect to be in the room that night to celebrate the St. Louis Rams Super Bowl victory. We have another event coming up in November, November 19th, 2024, that we're partnering with the Forever Young Club. That it's a little less known name, but that's kind of the future of the speaker series is to bring in names and people that, one are celebrity names and big names, but we also want to bring in people that we're having a conversation about what we can do to impact our community today and in the future. Right. And sometimes those speakers aren't the big names in order to have conversations of how to impact our community. And the one coming in November is with Professor Ness Sandoval from St. Louis University, kind of talking about the demographic trends of St. Louis and Missouri and the Midwest and the United States. And some of that data trend is not as favorable as maybe we would like. And I think this is a conversation to understand where our region is going and what are some things we can do to reinvigorate growth in our region in the future of our region. So I'm excited to have that topic. But I know everyone's really focused on the St. Louis Rams and the Rams celebration and having Coach Vermeil and Coach Martz in the house. But
and again, back to that same connection. Several of those people you've mentioned, it's not their first time here. Multiple of those individuals have been here for different events in the past.
Right.
And they know what it is. They know what the MAC is.
Yeah, Coach Vermeil was at the Jack Buck Sports Awards last year. And so, he was here and had such a great experience here at the Missouri Athletic Club that when we reached out to him to come back and be part of this event, it was almost an automatic yes. Yeah. And we're just so it'll be his second time at the MAC. And of course, when he was in St. Louis coaching, the Rams, there was a connection there too to the Missouri Athletic Club. So. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned this earlier, but you talked about, relatively speaking, while the MAC has this long storied history and these types of events, still, this current iteration of the speaker series and the committee is still relatively young. How did it all start? How did this get going? Well,
it started back in 2020 when first year I was on the MAC board. We had our planning session late in 2020 about, of course, the focus of the planning session was around member engagement. Yeah. And of course, that was in the middle of COVID and what are we going to do to engage members? And we looked at some best practices of other clubs and looked around, and some other clubs had a really robust speaker series where it was an academic or a speaker series around academic, education, business, leadership, community, just a very robust speaker series. And we thought with the history of the MAC and the connections we have, we should have a very robust MAC Speaker Series, and it seemed like something we could do. And it was, fellow Governor Chris Swank, a member of the MAC, that it was Chris Swank and myself that kind of kicked off that idea and started marching down the path to create a speaker series. And so in 2021, we had our very first event in 2021, and we're now 12 events in since then, and it continued to grow with a good pipeline of events upcoming. And, I know we don't want to leak any secrets about who we're talking to in the future.
Come on, that's what the podcast is for. Come on.
But we do have some really good ideas coming up in 2025 and really beyond with some fun and exciting guests and names and important topics to be talking about. So it's just it evolved in member engagement and thinking about the rich history of the MAC and what we can do going forward. And we formed the committee, and it has just really has continued to take off, and every event has been super special in its own unique way of whether it's the topic or the speaker themselves has really created, I think, some really important moments to the Missouri Athletic Club.
Well, and on that same point, you kind of said this, but let's be very specific about this. You kind of, as a Speaker Series committee, sort of have a, what would you call it, a recipe, if you will? I mean, what you're kind of looking for how you divvy up the targets. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I want to kind of go back to and kind of mention the mission statement, because I kind of really want to kind of drive that home, that what really drives us is, that's an exclusive event for our members and guests to actively engage with leaders impacting community, sports, business, and leadership. And, we guide that with, we like to have 4 events a year. And I think over time, as we build this out, I think we can have more events. And not every event has to be 300 people in the Missouri room. An impactful conversation with 75 to 100 can be as equally impactful. But, 4 events a year, we want to have I would say a national, speaker. I think we would like to have, a couple, regional, speakers, and, people really enjoy the sports aspect of it. So, and over the course of time, we will invite every CEO of a major company in St. Louis to participate in our speaker series. And I really hope over the course of the next, 5-10 years, we can look and say, hey, every big company in St. Louis, their CEO has been to the Missouri Athletic Club to spread their message of what they are doing to impact, the St. Louis community. And then we just reach out, from there for, regional, local, and national, speakers.
Well, and I think to that point, I really like a specific part of that mission, which is the fact that this is a conversation. You kind of mentioned it a little bit with Bob Costas, but, this is Bob Costas. There wasn't he wasn't here to do press conferences. We didn't have, when we do our sports events, a lot of times there's a media presence. There's, the sports, personalities, the Basketball Writers Awards winners. They're getting interviewed, all these other things. This is a conversation, right? This is a different atmosphere. This is a intimate conversation, even if it is in the ballroom with 400 people.
Yeah, no, there were a number of people that were able to ask Bob Costas questions. And I think it's a big part of our speaker series is the engagement that not only are you in a room with someone that's impacting our community at a high level, you're able to shake a hand and you'll be able to ask a question, tell a story. The goal is not just to hear someone speak. The goal is to engage and to meet and to know that, that you have access to this type of a conversation at the Missouri Athletic Club. That's what the speaker series is geared for, is for our members to engage with the speakers that they would otherwise not have this opportunity to engage with these speakers.
Right. Well, and that rolls right in. Perfect segue. How obviously it's been well received by our members, right? I mean, what are you hearing feedback-wise?
Well, I mean, every event I hear great feedback. I mean, just, from the, the super celebrity Bob Costas, Joe Buck type of events to, more down-to-earth events. The feedback I've received have been really good, because I think people are very hungry to have academic conversations on diverse topics and be in the room with people that are impacting our region, our country, and the world. And I think everybody walks out of that room feeling really inspired and feeling like a real connection to the person who spoke. We receive as a committee nothing but positive feedback, and the goal is we just want to keep this energy going. And if you like the speaker series, just ask members to engage with us. And I think there's a message that I would say as we go over time, the speaker series is building the brand of there, because there's going to be moments that not every speaker series is a celebrity speaker,
right.
And you have to trust our committee and what we've built over the last 3 years and then 12 events that we've had, that if we bring a speaker in, you can trust that the topic and the speaker is going to be of high quality.
Right.
It's going to be something that exceptional members want to hear,
right,
and be engaged with. And when you look at it, you maybe don't know that speaker's name, but you still want to go, because I can assure you it's an important topic and it's somebody you want to know, or they have information that you would want to hear and find out more about. So the brand of the speaker series, I want people to know that they can trust. They can trust
what they're getting.
Trust that it's going to be a great event.
Right.
It's going to be worthy of their time and energy to come out and hear what we have to say.
And you've said this a couple times, but we probably want to reiterate the fact that, yes, we absolutely want those suggestions. If you've got that contact, or I think the other way around, right? Even if you're a member of the club and you would just love to see if we can get this person, we want those suggestions.
Absolutely. There's always room on our committee, and there's always room for ideas. And that's the success. The backbone of our success is the connections to the speakers.
Yep.
And if there's a member out there that has a connection that you think would be an interesting story for the MAC, please reach out to MAC, me, and we all ideas are good ideas. Doesn't mean get on the agenda in the next 6 months. But we need to build a pipeline out, because that's what's important, is that we're thinking about speaker series events for third quarter and fourth quarter of 2025, even into 2026. Right. So we're thinking about ideas 18 to 24 months in advance of where we are today. And a deep pipeline of ideas is the best possible problem to have.
Couldn't agree more. We love that. Well, anything else about the speaker series? Anything we didn't mention? Any last minute tidbits you want to share?
Hey, just continue the great support, the great feedback of the MAC speaker series,
and selling out events. Love that.
Well, in order to keep doing these events, you need need a full room to do it. And once again, it's great to have 300 and some people in the Missouri room, but it's also important when we're in the art lounge or other venues that you have a full room, because the CEO of a company that's coming here to talk about their company and the impact that they're making to St. Louis, we as members want to show support for that company, and to support the speaker. It's not just supporting the speaker series, looking at the speaker who's here and making sure that we as a MAC community are supporting the people that are coming here to speak, because the people that are here, we have made a decision that this is someone that is impacting our community, is a good leader, is someone that's impacting business, and it's something that we want to show our reciprocal support to that individual that's speaking, and we don't want to let them down. And so your continued support is what's going to keep this going. And over the course of time, I know there's going to be a lot more celebrity names that'll come through, and we're going to have a lot of important conversations. And, if I could look out as a long-term goal, 10, 15 years from now, I think we can look back and say maybe the speaker series changed the trajectory on some topics in St. Louis that changed the minds of people for the better.
Agreed.
And
I think it's wonderful. Well, Governor Albart, thank you so much. And hey, let me, this isn't just you, because I know it is your group, it's your whole team, but on behalf of the club, thank you so much. We really appreciate all the hard work, because, again, I maybe made light of it, but sometimes it's not as simple as, I reached out and made a quick phone call. We know there's a lot more that goes into it, so we really appreciate all the hard work from your team on that.
Well, you're welcome, but I also said there's a MAC team here between Jim Wilson and Katie Maurer and Chip Mission, the whole team at the MAC that puts these that make it happen. So there's many people to thank for the success of the MAC Speaker Series, and thank you for having me on. And hopefully we're here years from now talking about the impact the Speaker Series has made to the MAC and our community.
I'm sure we will be. I'm sure. And thank you to all who are listening for tuning into another amazing episode of Missouri Athletic Club Connections. Stay connected with us through the events calendar, the MAC app, and social media, and we'll see you real soon. Now, here are just some of the conversations from the Bob Costas MAC Speaker Series event with KSDK's Frank Cusimano moderating.
Well, let's begin in the beginning. Yeah. When your love of sports started to happen, maybe in your dad's car, listening to baseball.
Yeah, well, my dad, as some people know, was an inveterate gambler. And the mortgage was often riding on whether Whitey Ford could get Al Kaline out or Wilt Chamberlain could make a couple of free throws. And this is before cable TV. It's before the internet. And so unless the game was on TV on Long Island or on the radio, he couldn't follow his bets. And so if he had a bet on the Tiger game, his only hope was to try and pick up WJR in Detroit and hear Ernie Harwell through the crackle and static. So he'd give me the keys. I'm like 11 years old. I'm not going to drive the car, but I'd just turn the ignition far enough to light up the dashboard, and you'd see the radio dial, and I would calibrate that dial like a safecracker, trying to find WJR or Bob Prince on KDKA in Pittsburgh. And on a very clear night from 900 miles away, I'd get Harry Carey and Jack Buck on KMOX. And so this is like 1963, 64. Now, if he was losing his bet, I'd sometimes lie and say I couldn't find it. But if he was winning the bet, I'd come back in and give him a full play-by-play. And that actually was what sparked not my love of sports, that was already there, but the idea that you could be one of those voices in the night. And to me, it wasn't about television, it was about radio, because the descriptive aspect of radio was what really entranced me. And I've always felt that someone who was good at radio could cut back and put captions beneath the pictures on television. Whereas on radio, you've got a blank canvas, you paint the entire picture. It's very rare for someone who starts in TV to learn to be good on radio, but the reverse works pretty well.
So speaking of play-by-play, that's how you got to St. Louis, a doctored tape while you were at Syracuse to impress Mr. Hyland. It's a great story.
Well, when I heard that the Carolina Cougars had moved to St. Louis to become the Spirits, and I had an in the office, my roommate at Syracuse, who I just saw a couple of nights ago in New York, Roger Holstein, who, by the way, was one of the two guys who started WebMD, so he's richer than God now. And I always had high hopes for his future. He was my roommate at Syracuse, and he transferred to Swarthmore. He had grown up around Cleveland, and he was a cousin of the guy who was the president of the newly minted Spirits of St. Louis. So he calls me and says, "Why don't you submit a tape?" I said, "Roger, the games are on KMOX. They're not going to hire me on KMOX. That's Jack Buck's station. Just send a tape." Okay, so I find a tape that I did on the campus station at Syracuse when I was 20 years old of a game between Syracuse and Rutgers. And I listened to it, and it's not bad, but I edit out all the choppy parts, and I string together Syracuse with the ball, Rutgers with the ball, and I edit out the score if it wasn't really sequential. And then I have an engineer re-record it with the treble down and the bass up, so I sound older and more mature. and I send it off to KMOX. And lo and behold, I get a call from Bob Hyland, and he wants me to come into St. Louis for an interview. And what had happened was that out of a couple of hundred applicants, they'd whittled it down to 3. And Jack Buck listened to the tapes, and he said, "Bring this kid in among the 3. And I come in, and the first thing that Buck says to me, just to make me feel welcome, "I have ties older than you, kid." That's what he said. "I have ties older than you." And I'm, okay, fine. So, and I'm just like totally in awe that I'm even having a conversation with Jack Buck, who was well known nationally. I mean, he'd done the Super Bowl and other big events for CBS. So I knew who Jack Buck was virtually my entire life. But I also thought this is still a long shot. And I thought I better go to Stan Musial and Biggie's because I'll never set foot in St. Louis again. I had no credit cards, and I want to emphasize that I had a hamburger and a Coke, and it probably only cost $10, if that. But I left 3 singles, a quarter, a nickel, and a penny. And the waiter must have been confused, but it was my tribute to Stan Musial's lifetime batting average of .331. And I thought there's no chance I'm coming back, so I better do this right now. And then lo and behold, they hire me because in the interview, Mr. Hyland had said, "What do you think would be an appropriate salary?" And I said, "Whatever you want to pay me." And so he didn't say anything at that time, but then when he said you got the job, he told me $11,000 for the season and to work year-round at KMOX, apart from the basketball games. And I distinctly remember saying, "Mr. Hyland, if I had $11,000, I'd pay you for the job." So I happily accepted.
And with the Spirits, you developed a unique and fun relationship with one of the more charismatic figures in basketball history, Marvin Barnes. Yes. The stories are endless. What jumps out at you about your relationship with Marvin? It was friendly, really friendly.
Oh, very friendly. In fact, I knew Marvin to his dying day, and we were in touch. It's a semi-tragic story because he never fulfilled his potential. He was the second player taken coming out of college at Providence. He was on a team that went to the Final Four here in St. Louis. That was the Final Four where Bill Walton made 21 of 22 shots for UCLA against Memphis State. Walton was the number 1 pick in both the NBA and the ABA, and Marvin was number 2. The game of the week meant something different than it does now because there's so many games everywhere, and you can access a link to everything, and you can get games streaming. But then, if you lived in Montana or something, that was the one game you saw all week long. And if you lived in St. Louis, you never saw the American League except in the World Series or in the All-Star game. So if you wanted to see Carl Yastrzemski or whatever, you had to watch the game of the week. So the game of the week had a different meaning. And I was doing the backup games then and thrilled to be doing it with Tony Kubek. And the lead announcers were Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola. But their game got rained out. And the Cardinals and Cubs went to the entire country. And it's a classic setting, a beautiful Saturday afternoon at Wrigley Field, the rivalry, the Cardinals and the Cubs. And it's an incredible game. Willie McGee hits for the cycle and isn't the player of the game because Ryne Sandberg went 5 for 6 with 2 homers, both of them off Bruce Sutter, one in the 9th and one in the 10th, both last-ditch homers to, tie the game and send it into extra innings. And eventually the Cubs win 12-11 in 11 innings. And the movie The Natural had just come out. And after the second home run, I said something to the effect of, "This may be the real Roy Hobbs because this is the stuff of myth and legend and whatever it might be." And to this day, Sandberg views that as the game that put him on the map nationally. And they dedicated a statue to him this summer at Wrigley Field. And they did it on the 40th anniversary of that game. In fact, the bell is tolling for Ryne Sandberg. And he had me come back and introduce him, which was very nice. So I think it was the combination of circumstances more so than anything I did. Sometimes you can enhance a moment. Other times you just pray that you don't mess it up. And I guess maybe what I did was somewhere in between those two. But what Sandberg did and what the Cardinals and Cubs did that day was unforgettable.
So your celebrity started to grow and you appear on Letterman, Leno, Conan, and then one memorable night with Johnny Carson. And we have video for this.
Yeah. Everybody, Johnny Carson and The Tonight Show at that time, that was it. I'm sorry to drop a name, was with Jerry Seinfeld a couple of nights ago. And he knew to the day, the first time he was on, how long the set was, what the first joke he told was. This was way before the Seinfeld sitcom. Everybody, thought it was the big moment of their life to be on with Johnny Carson. The last 2 or 3 Olympics that I did, I asked the people at NBC if I could just start on the first day of competition, or if I could just open the broadcast and then throw it out to someone else at the opening ceremony, because I could never figure out exactly where the sweet spot was. I think some people viewed it as high church. Other people think it's like Cirque du Soleil in some aspects. You know, it's a combination of kind of goofy and half UN Security Council meeting. You know, it was very hard for me because I tend sometimes to be sarcastic. If I'm sentimental, if I highlight drama, it's sincere. I don't like to hype anything. I mean, I'll do my job. I'm not going to sneer at something, at least not often. But, you know, I would occasionally throw in certain lines that the audience liked, some portion of it, and others thought it was too irreverent. I remember the Athens opening ceremony in 2004, and a good portion of the ceremony was dedicated to Greek mythology. So along comes this, and they're all coming out. You know, Zeus is coming out, and everybody's coming out. And so Oedipus comes out, and I mean, not for real, but some representation of Oedipus comes out. So I turn to Katie Couric and say, Katie, as you know, Oedipus is the figure of Greek mythology who murdered his father and married his mother, a sequence of events that seldom turns out well. Now, I'm good with that. Some people are not, you know. On another one, I think it might have been Barcelona in '92. Brunei comes in, and they have 8 people in their delegation, not including the Sultan of Brunei, but there were 8 people in the delegation, not one of whom was an athlete. They're just like a bunch of poobahs from Brunei marching into the Olympic Stadium. So I think I was doing it with Dick Enberg. Dick, apparently here, hoping to medal in the buffet category. Like, you know, okay, fine. You know, I just don't think I was the right guy for the job. That's all.
You know, a lot of people have broadcasting careers here, and then they go to New York or LA, and we never hear from them again. Why have you always maintained this as your base? Why have you never really left our town?
KMOX had a lot to do with it. KMOX was a broadcaster's mecca. The history of it, so many great broadcasters. I think that what I learned by osmosis, which just seeped in being around not just the great sportscasters, but Jack Carney, Bob Hardy, who was like St. Louis's Walter Cronkite when it came to news, Jim White late at night, being around that kind of broadcasting and the kind of romance of broadcasting, the theater of the mind that is radio, that was important. And of course, my children were born and raised here. And I would say that more than half of my closest friends are from St. Louis. And everyone has always been so kind to me. And I'll often, you know, walk through the airport and somebody just kind of calls out in a way that's different than if they recognize you in the airport in Dallas. It's just different. So I feel like I was kind of adopted, and I have lots of memories and a lot of gratitude for the people here in St. Louis. And I think also being part of Cardinal Glennon and being able to pay it forward in that way. You know, Jack Buck was the guy who really set the standard there. Jack Buck was a great broadcaster, but he also had a great heart. He was so generous with his time and did so much for charities, and he was here for so long that I would guess, you know, the old game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you can connect somebody in the movie industry to Kevin Bacon in no more than 6 moves. I'll bet you in St. Louis for generations, you could probably play 3 or 4 degrees of Jack Buck, and either that person had met Jack personally, had some personal anecdote, or their uncle or their brother or somebody, because he was such a presence around town. And that made an impression on me. And I tried as best I could. No one could ever match what Jack did. But I tried as best I could not only to be a good broadcaster, but to be a good citizen of St. Louis.
All right, so we'll do this in true KMOX Sports Open Line fashion. Good. You're on the air, sir. Go ahead. Your question for Bob.
First time, long time, Bob. But listen, seriously, you're a legend. Just a quick story about Mike Shannon. You know, Frank, I'd be interested in your opinion. You know, did we celebrate Mike the way we should have? I don't know. But your thoughts on the legendary Mike Shannon?
Here's the thing with someone like Mike Shannon, and there are a handful of people that kind of fall in the same category. It all has to be local. You can't do it nationally. I mean, John Madden, bigger than life character, but it still isn't the same because he's doing games for a variety of teams. The local baseball announcer is your guy, your team. So Mike Shannon wouldn't fit the description of a network announcer. He wasn't an announcer of the same caliber in that sense as Jack Buck or as Joe Buck when Joe, as a young announcer, sat alongside him, or Bob Starr, who was a classic announcer. But Mike was St. Louis's own. He didn't arrive here as a broadcaster. He was on 3 pennant-winning teams, and he grew up in St. Louis.
St. Louis Hall of Famer.
Right. He was, a big high school star, and I think the coach at Mizzou was who would it have been then?
Frank Broyles.
Frank Broyles, before he went to Arkansas, said that he could have been an All-American quarterback if he had decided to do that. So the roots are deep. And then he's just a genuine character, and his malaprops were so funny.
We don't know what malabouts really means, Bob. But,
so endearing. In the late 90s, when home runs are flying all over every ballpark in the big leagues, he gets into a story, and he says, during batting practice tonight, the baseball was flying out of here like it had a date with you know who.
Amen. Yeah.
You know how long 10 seconds of dead air is on the radio?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like it had a date with, the thing about it is, he had no plan when the sentence started.
Amen. Yeah.
It wasn't like he just forgot. He said, I'll go down this path and see where it leads. Yeah. Oh, shit, it's going nowhere. But nobody's going to hold it against him. One of the things that made Jack great was that a lot of people have a signature home run call, but many of his greatest home run calls were just what occurred to him in the moment. Go crazy, folks, go crazy. Just occurs to him in the moment, the combination of excitement and surprise, but he also knows this is on KMOX. Everybody listening to this is rooting for the Cardinals. He can't do that. He can't do that if it's a national broadcast. The very next game, Jack Clark wins the pennant with a home run off the same pitcher, Tom Niedenfuhr, at Dodger Stadium. Adios, goodbye, and maybe that's a winner. He may say something like that very occasionally. Famous one in the 91 World Series, which was on national TV on CBS when Kirby Puckett hits the walk-off homer in Game 6. We'll see you tomorrow night. And then Joe Buck reprised that 20 years exactly later, also Game 6, also in extra innings, right? When David Freese hit the home run, it's a great call, but it's such a poignant bookend tribute to his dad, and we'll see you tomorrow night. And so now, since we've gone overtime here, we've gone to extra innings ourselves, but since we're in the building that houses the Jack Buck Grill, and since everybody seems to be of a mind that we can push the envelope a little bit, how about this? I'm just in St. Louis, a couple of years. It's 1976, 77. And the Cardinals are finishing up a West Coast trip. And they're playing the last game in San Francisco. And I'm listening to the game on the radio. And Jack says, well, when this one's over, the Cardinals will head to the airport, will land at Lambert at 7 a.m., and by 8, they'll be in the arms of their loved ones. And by 9, they'll be home. I'm telling you got to have some equity with both your employer and your audience to get away with that in 1977. Good night, everybody, and thank you for being such a great audience.